The amazing thing about an artwork is that once you saw it, it's yours. You see something, and I'm always fascinated. I remember a lot of stuff I saw, and they're all mine. I come from a place with little identity. I mean, there is its own identity, but we don't, like in that, the order of society, whatever, there is a less, an emphasis on identity in this way. So in that way, I often think, you know, we sit here in this place where there is a lot of art, and you know, each thing has its clear, I can see, oh, this is, and this is, this is that thing. If I think what I do, I couldn't really give you an image of what it is. I mean, there are many things I think that develop over the years to become their own thing, but that's not a one image that I have in me. You know, I never had that interest. My exposure to this, to art in this way, the you know, art world, art history, art, however you put it, was always by like in this photo school. You know, there was they bought new books every couple weeks. They put them there, and you look at them and you think, oh, that's interesting, or you know. Then I went to see some shows. I saw a Bruce Nauman show once. I remember that. I really thought that's interesting. This thing with the clowns, and you know, that made a good impression on me. And then when I went to this arts, this postgraduate program called the Ateliers in Amsterdam, and there you had all these professionally educated kids. So they came, they had per year 5 Dutch kids and 5 from wherever. And they all had this proper art school lingo. They talk about work, why it matters. They knew this, or they like Duchamp, or this thing, or that thing. You know, so you enter that, and then there is this, the more specialized kids that talk about Smithson, or like, you know. So whatever identity you kind of take on in this context, if you want to be the connoisseur specialist, or you want to be the one in the middle. So it was kind of like entering this postgraduate program was like entering a theater play, because I didn't really know people before that underwent this kind of education. And there were some men at the time, there was 93, they were still like, they were fighting Julian Schnabel. There were 2 of these guys, they made big paintings and this, and they were always kind of angry, and you know, so you had this and you had somebody else that's conceptual, and you just saw all these people doing their thing, and you know, 20 people in one building, and you just look at that, you know. And so it's like you see all these archetypes of artists, and with that their interest, and then through their interest they shape your interests, because you learn, or part of it you extract and you learn. I think in the context of this art school, I did feel like an outsider, because I never understood culture in such a structured way before. But it was very liberating to understand that you can, at any point in your life, if it is interesting to you, and you can do that in many places, in many fields of interest, you can tap into, let's say you have interest in art, and you can tap into this at a young age, or whatever age, and then all of it, you're part of all of it. It doesn't mean that you may be an active part of it, but you can enter a thing that starts before the pyramids and goes to now, and it's all connected, and you can partake and move around in there. So it really is like a world that can open up to you if you have an affinity to it, you know. Some people have that with music or with literature or everything or nothing or cinema. I always did like these photos, and logically, the way I grew up, television was not as much fun as it is now. Um, you know, we didn't have that many channels, and a lot of movies were kind of older, like from Hitchcock to whatever. And I always thought that that had some kind of appeal. This form of this artificiality of these figures. They were not. I mean, that's all basically before cinema verite. All this stuff is before the idea of the real in a cinema. It's like there is which is how real is that? But there is this artificiality that is kind of beautiful and distant. So I always did like I was very much drawn to this people and to these images of these people and the lobby cards and the movie or whatever, all this. I thought it was very beautiful in a way, or like it was mysterious, and there was also I don't know exactly the history in the lighting. I have my own theory, but this is really not confirmed. That the lighting you have in the 40s and then into the 50s, there is and why some of these appearances are so like idealized, like a Hellenistic almost idealization. If you think of Horst be Horst, then you think what's the Heuning and his mentor, and this kind of idealization of a body or of a ruin or of whatever, like there is just, it's done by light. So basically it's carved with light and shadow. And there is definitely like an aesthetic thing that then jumped over into in the 40s and 50s. And so maybe that's kind of how my own personal thing of how that was just a successful look, of an image, I made works with organic matter, like with fruits, vegetables, anything, as well as the wax pieces and like these candles, like the one that was here at the Bourse, for example, the big one. They are in transition, and I mean, sure, one form of understanding that is it as a memento mori, as related to death, like in this way, this existential thing of, it exists and then it doesn't, this before and after. But it is also, I think, it's I see it as something gentler and inviting, because it doesn't pretend to be there forever, and it has a softness and how we can approach it, because it is relatable in some way. It's not eternal. In materiality, it feels more eternal in its finity, And for me, I think this. I find great joys buying groceries or like vegetables, and you come home and you unpack that, and it's so beautiful. I mean, you cannot make a sculpture that looks as good as this. I mean, it's just like it's so much life in there, So I enjoy that, and with the wax, it is also. It's a very organic feeling material, like it has a depth. And if I would make portraits out of marble, I wouldn't know how to do that. The impermanence of some of these portraits that I make of people is what makes it possible for me to make a figurative portrait in this time, without that there is a glorification or something. There is as much as is erect, it also collapses, and that just kind of came about. I was not premeditated. A lot of art is you record a moment. There is art where you make an art, in the creation of an artwork, where you spend a lot of time like doing it, so you create an illusion of something beautiful, or there are ways of let's say a side Twombly or whatever, where it records a kind of a quick moment, and that's probably all. A lot of art that came post exposure to jazz music. I mean, mainly in American art, like all of that is happening in the end 40s, early 50s, and this kind of improvisational thing, and the rawness of your mark making, so that there is no cleaning up. That is definitely, I think, the big influence on that is probably jazz music was the way this. So I don't know if it's appropriated, but it's the attitude is appropriated or learned or like inspired or whatever, however you put that. And in that, I like mark makings and I like to freeze a quick thing. Like it's just like you can look at anything in nature. You can look at water moving, and it just looks good. So you can then spend 50 years painting that exactly, or you can just try to have that movement or that feeling you have and translate that. So in some way, when I started with this more abstract, I mean, in a way they're figuration because they're a replica of a smaller version that is then figurative in its, if that conversation even matters, of abstract and figurative and all that. I mean, what's an abstract thing anyway? A lot of abstract stuff. If the Malevich square is an icon, and in the end you translate it cerebrally into some lesser abstract thing by giving it meaning and context, but so these clay sculptures, it was just like I like the feeling when you work. If you work with clay comes straight out of the ground, and there is a feeling, and it records. It's like a violin. It shows every little move you make. Like it shows everything. So it records your smallest gestures, and it bounces back a bit. But it's really as sensitive as a violin versus a piano, which is also sensitive, but has a certain. It just takes on everything, and so it's a very beautiful medium, and you see from a lot of. I always like. For example, here when you go to the museum, all that, the simple, quick things, it records much more than when it got translated down and down and down. So, for me, like I really love the speed. So there is something in the speed before you have control, where you have control, but you don't kill it. In the beginning, it was way more accidental, so I made like hundreds of these, and even then, you feel when you start to try to make it something, you kill it, and these things, some of them just started to happen, and it goes almost by repetition, and then it came through selection in the past. So then you made hundreds of these things, and then you look, and each one has its character, and you just go by elimination, almost like a casting show. So that was the first ones that I made, and to really record something primal in a way, like before you give it shape, before you insert yourself or your history or everything you insert in the editing, not in the creation, basically. You still do insert yourself, but on some point I realized like some movement is almost like dance. Some movements, even though they go very quick, they have a form, a shape, and I got interested in these very primal shapes. I mean, I don't know. I can only talk for myself. I'm often the thing in the way between an artwork and me is me. If that makes sense. So it's just like I think back to this books. For a 3-year-old, it's just you'll see something and it resonates. And the amazing thing about an artwork is that once you saw it, it's yours. You see something, and I'm always fascinated. I remember a lot of stuff I saw, and they're all mine because they're in my memory and they distort. But it's really this kind of thing. You don't need to. you know, you don't need to understand because you understand.